Hi, and welcome to today's show of Open for Business. It's 2 p.m. It's a British summertime, and obviously I'm Nick Wood, and I started this show in order to help businesses when the COVID first struck, to let us know whether they were open for business, what they were doing, and it has morphed, and now we're chatting to all sorts of people. And if you were watching last night, or even listening, where we had our little venture into Utah and had Open for Business USA, well, I've kind of kept the theme going a touch today, because today's guest is a wonderful person. I met her a couple of years ago and she blew my mind. She is Chrissie Cuming Walters, and she is a lawyer, solicitor, award-winning lawyer, solicitor. And she actually told me that a prenup could become a postnup, which just blew my mind. So without further ado, I want to introduce you to the very lovely Chrissie. Hi, Chrissie. Thank you so much for joining me today. Always great. It's been great to catch up with you just before the show as well. So you're an award. First of all, let's tell everyone. So you are an award-winning solicitor. Tell me what happened. How did you get your award?
Well, I was nominated towards the beginning of the year for the Lawyer Monthly Women in Law Awards. In the category of family law. They have several categories, and so that sort of morphed, as it were. They asked me for a submission in respect of some of the work that I've been doing, and a list of people they could contact to talk to me about the work that I've undertaken for them, or colleagues, barristers, etc. Similar to the process that the Legal 500 or Chambers undertakes, and so I did. And lo and behold, shockingly, I got it, or maybe not so much. I don't know. So yeah, a very strategically placed there behind.
Yeah, no, it looks good. I think we'll put a photo up towards the end of it after the show, so people can see it in all its glory. But quick before we get started, so you have your award. But were you allowed to have an award party where you all glammed up and got handed it, or?
No, it arrived very unceremoniously in the post, unfortunately. Obviously because of the circumstances. So everything, was sort of done and submitted and all of that towards the beginning of the year and before lockdown. But the shortlisting and all of that sort of stuff happened post lockdown, and the actual award was announced. I want to say it was July. And so there wasn't, a bit of a bummer, because it's always nice to get dolled up and be all fancy and go for a lovely dinner and some drinks and
exactly
and what have you, but maybe next time.
I think next year they should redo it again and just have multiple winners. Now, the reason we had a Open for Business USA yesterday, where we had two guests from Utah, of all places, and of course I said, I've kept the theme a little bit with you, because you're, as people can tell from your slight twang, that you're from across the pond as well. But that's great, because you're actually a qualified attorney, and in the US, and a lawyer solicitor in the UK, which I'd imagine is quite something. How on earth did you start?
All on my own back. So I am a New York, New Jersey, and Pennsylvania qualified attorney at law, still qualified, as well as a solicitor of England and Wales. So I decided, I don't know, I guess about when I was 3, that I was going that I wanted to be something in a professional capacity, really. And then sort of fast forward. And when I was in high school, we went on a field trip to the local courthouse to watch a trial, and it was a criminal trial. And I mean, I think I was probably about 16, and I remember very clearly, like I could tell you the guy's name. I'm not going to. The guy who was on trial, he was ultimately convicted. It was drug charges, and he was ultimately convicted and went to prison. And I thought that it was a grave injustice, as I tend to do. I thought it was a grave injustice, so I ended up actually writing to him in jail,
Oh wow.
which made my mother extremely happy.
I imagine, yeah.
And we actually corresponded for a little bit, but it was sort of that flavor there that was just like, actually, I don't want to be a doctor. I don't want to do these other things. I don't want to be a banker. I want to be a lawyer. That's what I want to do. And so I've kind of followed it through and kind of didn't. So you fast forward a few years, and I started studying economics. And the banker thing kind of took hold again, because I did some internships at Merrill Lynch, and I had a wonderful mentor there. And so that sort of took hold again, and then sort of lo and behold, I was at Penn State, and I took as an elective course a legal advocacy course with the professor was we referred to him as God Golumbic, and he referred to himself as God Golumbic, and he was amazing. Absolutely amazing. And he was had been for many years a senior partner at a huge white shoe firm. You would call it a magic circle firm over here.
Oh, okay.
And in Washington D.C. And he had argued and won 9 cases before the U.S. Supreme Court. So he was just an astounding individual, and took a liking to me and my sass and my sort of doggedness and all of that. And he called me the little dragon.
Yeah, could be. I've been called worse names than that. Yeah.
I've been called much worse things. So he called me the little dragon, and he recommended me for law schools, and he campaigned for me to get into law school and all of that. In the darker times, I have said that it was all his bloody fault. But in the lighter times, I am eternally grateful for him and what he taught me and the impact that he had on my life. So it was a large part of it was my own sort of dogged determination. And motivation, but also just really fortunate to have some great people into my life at the right time.
Yeah,
who were willing to help me.
Yeah, but I think that's one of life's great lessons, isn't it? Is that the more dogged, the more. I mean, it's like the old saying, isn't it? The harder you work, the luckier you get. If you don't put yourself out there, then no one's going to know. But your tenacity, self-belief got you an amazing mentor, I guess.
Yeah. I mean, and I've suffered for it. I went to law school. I went to law school at night. I didn't have any money at all, so I had to work full time. At the ripe old age of 21, 22. In New York City on my own, working full time for law firms during the day, sometimes into the evening, as you do, and then jumping on the train, running to school, at school for 2, 3, 4 hours, and then having to do the work as well, sort of while the city doesn't sleep until about 3 a.m. and all of that, and I did that for 4 years. Well, I mean, I suppose technically 3.5, because I stopped working for the last semester of my last year of law school, simply because I needed to focus on the bar, and I knew that if I was juggling the way that I was, that there, with the New York bar being as difficult as it is, that there was a good risk that I wouldn't pass it, and not passing it wasn't an option. So
not after that effort,
no. So and I took New York and New Jersey at the same time. So it was 3 days of bar exam, but studying for both at the same time and sitting both simultaneously, as it were. And
that's amazing. Gosh, and are you actually is New York where your family was from, or no? All right,
I have no family in New York at all.
All right, so go back a little bit. So where was growing up for you?
I grew up in the deep South.
Oh,
deep South. So I was born outside of Atlanta, Georgia, and we moved around about every 4 years while I was growing up. And even though my dad was not in the military, and lived in South Carolina outside of Charleston, and then spent most of sort of my childhood up until coming into my teens outside of Baton Rouge, Louisiana.
Oh, wow.
And then when the long story, very, very short, my family basically went bankrupt. And my mom's family was in Louisiana, which is where we went bankrupt. And my dad's family was in Pennsylvania. So when that happened, after the oil crash and everything in '87, because my dad was a mortgage broker,
Right.
then we had to move to Yankee country. We had to move to Yankee country, and so that's where I went to high school. Was in Pennsylvania, and then I went on to Penn State University after sort of going around the houses a little bit, and graduated from Penn State, and then went on to Brooklyn Law School.
Wow. Yeah, that's quite a move from down south to up to north, as we would say.
Very down south.
Yeah. Oh, wow.
Every once in a while, you still hear a little bit of a twang. I can't, after all these years of being away, it still comes out.
I know
some words.
I thought you just didn't sound like your typical New Yorker. I mean, you can talk as fast. Don't get me wrong.
Oh yeah. I can. Definitely can.
So you got you'd passed the bar in the States in New York and New Jersey, and so you stayed there for a while, or then you came to the UK. Talk us through that.
So I stayed. Well, I didn't stay in New York very long initially because I was married. So it was his turn. So he had gotten into and wanted to go to grad school in Washington DC, and so we moved like immediately following my taking the bar exam. It was like a week later, and we moved to the suburbs of DC, and so that didn't last very long. I did work as a general counsel for a think tank in DC for a little bit, doing sort of corporate responsibility stuff, because that was my bread and butter at the time. I used my background with Merrill Lynch in economics and all of that to work sort of around the financial services industry, but sort of from the legal perspective, regulatory perspective. And so I did that for a little bit, and then sort of took the decision that this wasn't working and the marriage was over, and stayed long enough to get jurisdiction for my divorce. As you do, when you're a lawyer, you look at these things. Stayed in the area long enough to get jurisdiction for the divorce, and then went back to New York.
Cool, fantastic. And so how long did you stay in New York until it became New York's loss and the UK's gain?
Well, strangely enough, even though I tell everybody that I'm from New York, I did actually spend some unfortunate time, or fortunate time, depending on how you look at it, in Philadelphia before I came over here. Oh, right. So I returned to New York. I mean, during all this time frame as well. I mean, just sort of looking back, I graduated from law school in 2003. I was admitted to the bars in New York and New Jersey in 2004 because it's a bloody process after you pass the exam. And so I graduated into one of the worst economic markets that there was in New York at the time, because we were only 2 years out of September 11th. So I was there. Yeah. I was in New York on September 11th. I was one of the people walking over the bridges after the towers went down.
Oh, wow.
So there were huge firms just shutting their doors overnight. after that happened, and loads and loads of like Harvard and Yale grads and what have you on the streets, and there just weren't really jobs to be had. So it was a really, really, really tough situation, and that's a bit of the reason for the bouncing around as well, because you kind of have to, you have to have a job, but it might not be the job that you want.
No, well, a job is better than no job.
A job is better than no job. So, I went back to New York. I did a little bit of employment law, which was just awful. And kept sort of trying to go back into financial services. And somehow in all this process, this transmuted into working to defend the pharmaceutical industry. Wow. So I ended up in pharmaceutical defense litigation, and that brought me to Philadelphia. So defended some of the big guys, as it were, with like congressional inquiries and super fun stuff like that, where I developed an involuntary eye twitch, and I didn't know what day of the week it was, because you'd go into a war room, and that was that. You get a congressional inquiry, and that was it. And you're in the room, and you're at the computer, and there you stay. Wow. So it was really quite, in some, I mean, the money was great. Being able to say that, you defended, such and such, I'm not going to say any names, but such and such, and what have you, fantastic for, your CV and all that sort of stuff. But it was really quite soul destroying. And it wasn't why I had gone to law school, I wanted to become a lawyer because I wanted to have hopefully a positive impact on people's lives, and I wanted to be client facing, and I wanted, I wanted to be, the one that they could rely on, to fix something, and to make their lives better. And that wasn't it, and it wasn't even making my life better, apart from the fact, that I was paying the bills.
Which is nice. Can I ask? Can I ask that? Did you ever have?
I met a guy who was British.
You know what these handsome British men are like.
I think I'm just going to go to England. And I say, I say that one of the reasons that I wanted to come to England was because I was a huge fan of Paddington Bear. And when life goes a bit wrong, he goes to London, finds himself a lovely family, and eats lots of beautiful marmalade sandwiches. Well, I hate marmalade, but the idea was pretty much the same. I've never had a silver spoon, and it's all been me all along. And I was like, you know what, I'm tired now, and I want to go, and I want to have some marmalade sandwiches, and and I want to sort of recalibrate the trajectory of my life, and that's basically what I did. And so at the ripe old age of 30, at that point, divorced, no assets, I sold everything off that I had, which was basically a car, really. I packed up myself and my cat, and and off we came. So I mean, it was, I say it sort of tongue in cheek, it was a year-long process, because I'd gotten my cat in New York from a kitty rescue place, and she was she's now passed, but she was needy. So she was quite needy, and I didn't want her to have to go into quarantine when she came over, because that would just be really, really devastating for her. So like when I got her, she would like chew the fur off of her tail whenever I'd leave the apartment, because she'd been so damaged by whatever it was that she had gone through. So she was very reliant on me, and I was like, and so I kind of took the decision that if she couldn't come, then I wasn't coming, and she couldn't be quarantined. So, we did all this hoo-ha to get her over here without having to be quarantined. And so she flew basically first class on Virgin Atlantic, and I flew steerage on US Airways, and she flew into Heathrow, and I flew into Gatwick, and it was all this thing.
Oh, bless her.
But and here we came, and I had 7 bags with me, and an apartment, and a place at UCL, and that was it.
Oh, brilliant.
So and I did a master's at UCL in legal and political theory, which was basically to bridge the gap.
Say, is that like
purposes.
not a conversion, but it's like just to bring you up?
I can't hear what you're saying.
Oh, sorry. So that was like not a conversion.
I can't.
You still here? Oh no. Let's do a switch. Do a switcheroo. Let's see if we can do. Can you hear me now?
It's not on my end.
Can you hear me now?
No.
No. Hold on. I'm gonna. This won't. Let's try. Try that one. Still no. Oh.
No, I don't know what's happened.
Hold on. Let's try and just. Hopefully, we won't lose the stream. We'll just do a quick refresh. Hold on. Hold on.
I guess that's one of the troubles with live broadcasting.
And we're back. Can you hear me now?
No.
I love technology. Right, in that case, then let us try another thing. Can you hear me now? Can you hear me now? No more, no more. Okay, what we're going to do is I'll take my stay there, Chrissie. Right, let's mute Chrissie for a minute. Let's take. Can you hear me on this side? No. Still no. Okay. In that case, we are going to have to do something a little different. No, it's not going to. Chrissie, we have to have a little timeout with 5 minutes, and then hold on. Oh, the joys of life, isn't it? Chrissie, can you hear me this time? Still no. Okay, guys, if you're watching, then sorry, we have a slight issue. I can hear a bit of feedback on my system as well. So we're going to curtail this interview, and we shall reconvene